So, we can continue our discussion on the safety testing of medical device. The objectives of this kind of testing is that first to assess whether the intended physiological function, whether this device that which we fabricated. So, essentially to make this phrase complete, capacity of the device to maintain intended physiological function. Now, intended physiological function, let us take the example of THR. So, then intended physiological function would be walking, or in case of very younger patients just little bit running. So, whether these kind of physiological functions are compromised after a patient receives this total hip joint replacement, that needs to be assessed. Second one, that what is the response of the host, and third one, what is the response of the device itself, and fourth one is that whether this device can perform for a significant period of time. So, essentially one can do some performance, device performance testing for the same example that I just mentioned, total hip joint replacement. One can use the hip simulator experiments. Now, there one can use 10 to the power 5, 10 to the power 6 number of fatigue cycles, and from there one can see whether this material can sustain without failure this such a large number of fatigue cycles, and on the basis of that such performance one can further predict this material can survive in human patient maybe for the time period of 15 to 20 years. But this is just a prediction, but when you are using 10 to the 5 number of cycles, you are not actually experimenting the material under biomechanical fatigue conditions for such a longer time period, but instead you are doing what we call some accelerated testing in the laboratory. Now, so your predictions may succeed or your prediction can fail in actual conditions when a patient receives the same biomedical device and then they maintain certain regular activity, physiological activity, and there it can so happen that the device can perform only up to in a respect in an appropriate manner for up to only 10 years. However, this kind of accelerated testing of hip simulator or different joint simulator testing is helpful at least to predict what is the total number of what is that lifetime or what will be the longevity of a new device that has come out of a specific research program. So, I repeat, the device performance testing is quite unique and they should not be confused or compromised with the simple lab scale testing of a coupon samples using standard array of materials characterization based techniques. So, for example, hip simulator simulates that more kind of fatigue type of conditions under the physiologically relevant loading conditions, and then it gives certain gait cycles, let us say and then certain fatigue cycles, and there people there on that simulator machine it can be seen that whether this material can sustain what is the maximum number of fatigue cycles, and on the basis of that this longevity of a device can be predicted. These are some of the examples of the different kind of preclinical trials one can do. For example, mechanical or hard tissue valve can be tested in sheep or pig model that I have mentioned before. The drug eluting coronary stents can be tested in a different animal model. Then ureteric stent in pig model can be tested. Orthopedic implants can be tested in goat model, dog model, using that segmental defect models, rabbit segmental defect models or typical femoral defects model. Dental materials can be used in dog or pig models. Okay. Now, some of the questions that one need to address while designing this kind of preclinical study is that what would be the duration of testing. Then duration of testing should be should have some similarity with the likely clinical exposure time, like or it has some correlation with the likely exposure time. Another way that one can also fix that testing duration is to see that at what time point the steady state host response is reached. That means that either fibrous encapsulation or certain inflammatory cell activity is reached a steady state, and that is the time frame that one should use in actual preclinical study. But for degradable materials, in one of the examples I have shown in the last module, that one material completely goes off after implanting in an animal model, leaving just a residue of that material. So, this is the sign of a large scale degradation in the physiological environment. Now, for those degradable materials, one has to fix the time period of implantation beyond the point of complete degradation. Okay. So, this is the beyond of complete degradation. So, let us say if the degradation takes place over 12 weeks or 14 weeks. So, if this degradation takes place 12 to 14 weeks, then one should do this preclinical study for let us say 52 weeks or 52 weeks or so on. Why such a longer time period is required? Because once you do this once you know that this material degrades in preclinical in any animal model in 3 months, then subsequent 3 to 4 months you have to study that how this degraded product is now distributed biologically in the total body and how it causes systemic or local toxicity to the tissue in different vital organs. So, the degradation products is not stationary or is not located at any given place, but it is expected that degradation products will be biodistributed and to cause some toxic effect to the different vital organs. Now, in this context there are two types of testing, and according to the ISO standards, that any testing which is less than 12 weeks of testing, we call it as a short term testing, and this is the animals like rodents or rabbits are commonly used, and to study degradation or osseointegration of the material or early osseointegration of the material. The long term testing, which is typically somewhere around 52 to 78 weeks, this is the time span this long term testing is done. This is conducted with little bit larger animals, so that it has a larger time span or lifespan. For example, dogs, sheep, goats, rabbits, goats, pigs and other animals. Often rodents and rabbits is may be difficult to maintain those experimental animal for sufficiently longer time period of 50 to 78 weeks. Therefore, the larger animals like dog, sheep, goat or pigs are used for long term testing, as I said, with relatively longer lifespan. This is a kind of a summary table like which are the animals which can be preferred for short term and long term. So, this is your short term implantation and these ones are your long term implantation. So, here you know since rats, guinea pigs, these are all like short term cases or little bit up to it extends up to 58 weeks, but certainly this may in many times people have seen that certainly rats or mouse they cannot survive such a longer time period once the implantation once you start doing this implantation experiments. And this all the 4 animals which are mentioned towards the end of this table or towards the later half like dogs, sheep, goat and then pigs, they are largely used for this long term implantation. The second consideration, so first consideration, as I said, this is the consideration number 1, the test periods of the animal testing. The second consideration is that what is the number of test samples for implantation, and the number of size of the implants inserted in animal depends on the size of species and anatomical locations. So, it also depends on the size of the experimental animals you are using. So, for example, if you use mouse or rat as your model animal model, then certainly you cannot use large material samples or large biomedical device samples in those animals. So, you need to use the miniature size or smaller scale down size of the materials or device in those things. And also anatomical location, whether it is a subcutaneous region like under the skin you are putting this material, or you have to open the heart and you do this open heart surgery in case of the pig model, and then put certain artificial heart valve or certain cardiovascular patches in those things. So, it all depends on what is the anatomical location and size of the species that you are using. So, just now I mentioned subcutaneous implantation. Here one can see that what is the effects of various treatment or modification of materials, or for chronic studies like influence of calcification. So, this is a typical example of the subcutaneous implantation which can be carried out in adult mice, rat, guinea pigs or rabbits. You can see that the skin is now stitched, but before that, when the skin is these 336 materials are essentially implanted in the subcutaneous region in the two sides of the dorsal sides, and you can see these are like marked here, and this marked region can be radiographed after it is implanted, and then it should be radiographed, or X-ray radiographs must be taken at certain regular interval to see whether there is this local region around the implantation, what I am trying to trace it with dotted lines, whether there is what is the extent of inflammation after the implantation that one can see in those X-ray radiographs. Now, intramuscular implantation, that is another type of implantation, and there essentially one can see what is the biological response in muscle tissues and compare between the test material implant and the control. Now, control in case of this preclinical study, one has to use clinically acceptable material with proven biocompatible characteristics. So, any material which is either clinically used in existing scenario or which has undisputed, let me put it this word, which has undisputed biocompatibility property or proven biocompatibility property in vivo. So, many of this, I will just give you some of the examples. When people want to use that the efficacy of a new biodegradable polymer composition, they often use polylactic polyglycolic acid as one of the control samples, because this PLGA, polylactic, a copolymer of polylactic acid and polyglycolic acid, is an FDA approved material. So, it is a US FDA approved material. So, nobody questions about the biocompatibility of that material. So, therefore, this can be used as a control material. When people use different bioceramic materials, then they use hydroxyapatite is another control material, because hydroxyapatite is widely accepted as a most biocompatible inorganic material. So, I have given you one example from the ceramic community, I have given you one example from the polymer community, just to show you that how to select the control for your preclinical study. Third consideration is that what is the site of implantation, whether it is a muscle. If it is a muscle, then typically 1 to 3 millimeter width or 10 millimeter length sample should be used, and sometimes the larger samples of 10 millimeter diameter or 3 millimeter thickness, that is like a cylindrical samples 10 millimeter diameter and 3 millimeter thickness also can be used just to put vertebral muscles in the rabbit. And this where one can put in the rabbits is like thigh muscles or gluteal muscles in rat. Fourth point is that, this is the third point I am continuing, that size of implantation in case of the bone related applications, like in case of rabbits, This is the kind of a standard guideline people use as per the ISO standard, like 2 millimeter diameter and 6 millimeter in length, and that is typically done in the femur. So, if you have a femur, then one can put the hole using that microtome, and this after this making this hole, then you can insert this 2 millimeter diameter sample. In dogs, sheep and goat, since they are little bit larger animal model, so therefore larger sample size can be used or larger sample size can be tolerated during the preclinical experiments. Just to give you an example on the numbers, like in case of this dog, sheep and goat, 4 millimeter diameter samples with 12 millimeter in length, that means larger the size of these samples which can be implanted in rabbits, those kind of implants can be put it inside this large animal model. This is just an example that in the femoral these 3 implantation sites, this 1, 2, 3. So, first these holes are created, defects are created, and then you can see that some materials are being implanted. This is the X-ray radiograph of these 3 implants. You can see this is the 2 sides of the 2 femurs, and why these 2 femurs are showing, because as far as possible according to the clinically approved guidelines, that preclinical study involving an experimental animal, the control implant and test implant must be inserted in 3 in numbers in the same animal on both sides of the both the femurs, or in other words, in one femur will receive 3 test implants, another femur of the same animal must receive 3 control implants. So, that one can essentially see the efficacy of the biocompatibility of the implants. So, what is the fourth consideration is that what is the total number of implants that one needs to take in this particular case. In case of rabbit, maximum 6 implant sites, as I mentioned, 3 for test and 3 for control. In case of dog, sheep, goat and pig, since there are larger elements, so they have a larger size of this bone femur. So, here 12 implants can be used, like 6 for test and 6 for control. I think I have mentioned this point categorically, and I have mentioned this in writing also. Whenever possible, reference control and test implant should be implanted into the same animal, except for toxicological evaluation. For all the osseointegration testing, for all the biocompatibility testing, this should be done as far as possible. Okay. The other things is that some of that examples shown here, that is for example, osteochondral defects. You can see these are small osteochondral defects, and this is the defects filled with a biomaterial, and this is the examples in the goat animal model. This is the examples of the rabbit animal model, how these osteochondral defects these are shown. This is some other example, that ulnar segmental defects in rabbit, and here you can see this is a large porous block which is put in the ulnar part of this rabbit, and this is the experimental rabbit which was used in this kind of experiments, and this is the X-ray radiograph of the implants after the implantation, after they are put into the ulna. Segmental defects is one of the other things. So, there is something called critical size defects. So, segmental defects or critical size defects means, so when you cut through osteotomy a large region of the relatively large region of a bone, and then you insert that large then you insert an implant which is of that equivalent size into the bone defect, osteotomic defect in that particular place. Here it is shown that 20 millimeter length. So, that is that large defect is created, segmental defect is created, and then you are filling that segmental defect with a biomaterial. And this is what is being shown in the X-ray radiograph also, that is the how this large segmental defect is being shown. Now, typically if the defect length is 2 to 2.5 times the diameter of the bone. So, D is your bone diameter, and the defect size, the length is length is created. So, if this is your bone, that what I am showing, this is your bone, small size bone. So, in or this is that, you know, in X-ray you can see it more clearly. So, what is the bone size, what is the diameter, and approximately 2 to 3 times diameter of the length of the defect if you create in that animal, then that defect size can be called as a critical size defects. And this is one of the examples that has been shown in the goat model, that how this in the femur of the goat, this large segmental defect is being created, and this is subsequently filled by these porous blocks of the materials. Now, before I conclude this entire preclinical study, let me just go through some 3-4 more slides. So, apart from that general safety study, apart from this biocompatibility study, apart from this overall osseointegration or osteoconduction aspect, which is a kind of hallmark of this in vivo biocompatibility experiments. Another important idea of conducting these in vivo experiments to assess the toxicity of the finer debris particles. Just to give you some clinical relevance to this toxicity study, this slide shows you that is this total integrated part of this total hip joint replacement. This is your modular neck, and this is your stem part which goes into femur of that human patients, and on the neck is fitted to your acetabular femoral ball head, and which is actually in conformal contact with the acetabular socket or acetabular cup. Now, during the walking, during running, each time any regular activity with hip movement essentially involves the friction at the polymer friction at the femoral head and acetabular socket interface. And because of this friction, you see this kind of smaller finer debris particles. Now, these are debris particles, you can see they are different in terms of both size and shape, and these debris particles, first of all, they can cause inflammatory mediatory response, and it can attract these macrophages and giant cells, foreign body giant cells, which you have seen. So, foreign body giant cells are large multinucleated cells which are activated towards the end phase of the fibrous capsule, fibrous tissue encapsulation. And through these inflammatory mediators release, they can activate the osteoclast cells. You remember there are 3 types of cells I have mentioned in a typical bone structure: osteoblast cells, which are essentially bone forming cells; osteoclast cells, which are essentially bone resorption cells; and osteocyte cells. This is the mature bone cells, or this is the end member of the osteogenic lineage during the differentiation of stem cells through the bones to the bone cells. Now, if the at any given point of time is number of osteoclast cells is more, or osteoclasts are more activated, that means bone will undergo resorption. So, there should be a healthy balance between the osteoblast cells and osteoclast cells. So, at any given adult matured bone, there should be more proportion of osteoblast cells compared to osteoclast cells. But in case of these wear debris induced biological effects that trigger that osteoclast activation, and once it triggers, then what happens, there is aseptic loosening effect takes place at the total hip joint replacement and the host tissue interface. And this actually necessitates that any materials that you are proposing, any new materials that you are proposing for total hip joint replacement must undergo toxicity analysis, not in the bulk form, but in its particulate form. That means these materials must be present in a very small particulate shape and size, mostly in the micrometer range, so that their potential toxicity in any in vivo system or any biological system in any experimental animal can be appropriately assessed. So, this is just a typical example of this histopathology analysis followed by in vivo osseointegration. I think I have mentioned these things also in the last 2-3 modules back, that you have a femoral defects here. So, these femoral defects, 3 implants can be put it inside a femur. Then after the implantation is over, you can do a series of chemical analysis and sample preparation for the histology, and which involves that you have to put these bone samples into certain resins, then you have to cut it through diamond saw or precision microtome. Then you can take a thin section, polish it. You have to use different staining agents depending on what kind of tissue and cells that you want to identify in your histology section, and subsequently it should be done by the simple optical microscope. Other things you use quite widely, that is the X-ray radiography in this in vivo osseointegration. Now, coming to the toxicity analysis of these wire debris particles. So, this is a classical example of the, let us say, total HIP simulator experiments. So, you do this kind of femoral head and acetabular socket. For example, you can use this ceramic femoral head and polymeric acetabular socket. You do a large number of cycles, so that large number of wire debris particles of different size and shape are produced. You make it, you dissolve them in polyphosphate buffer saline solution or PBS solution, so that you make that eluate of these particles. Then after that you put that inject these particles and the intra-articular region, as is been shown here, the intra-articular region of the knee joints in the mouse model, for example, and then you let the mouse survive after getting this injection. Now, after that then you can sacrifice the mouse after a predetermined period of implantation time, for example 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 12 weeks or so on. Then different vital organs like liver, kidney, spleen, lung, heart, their sections needs to be taken, and that should be assessed in the using the standard histology sample preparation. That should be assessed for different analysis to see that how this tissue is responded to this eluates, or whether the eluates have caused any tissue level toxicity in those vital organs. Apart from this histological analysis, one can do hematology and serum biochemical analysis, so that any blood parameters is significantly changed or not. Then subsequently analysis of enzymatic activities and synovium tissue needs to be done, and fourth one is a pro-inflammatory cytokine expression analysis, just to quantify what is the level of inflammatory response. And I have mentioned that different type of experiments can be done for 4, 8, 12 weeks in typical mouse model. So, these things are already reported from our group as well as various other groups in the literature. So, I think here I end for the in vivo biocompatibility testing, and I will start with a new module in the next time.